1. I'm going to say quick we've had an issue with this guy since we moved in. He smokes in his non-smoking apartment, having screaming matches with God who knows at all hours of the night. He's always out of his mind on something, and has had some questionable people leased from him illegally. The landlord has served him an eviction notice, but we're in Ontario, Canada, and things like that move very slowly here. Now for today. It was about 9 a.m., and I'm just finishing my cup of coffee after I put my youngest down for a nap. When I started to smell burning plastic instantly, I go on high alert and start checking our vents. Just in case one of my kids put something down there they shouldn't have. But I found nothing. I then followed the smell to the front door that goes out to the shared hallway. Open it, only for smoke to start bellowing into my apartment. I quickly realized that the smoke was coming from my neighbor's place. I yelled up the stairs at him to see if he was home. I got no answer. I ran up the stairs and pounded on the door, calling his name. As I am doing so, the door just flung open. It wasn't locked or closed properly. More smoke came out, making me cough and hack and my eyes burn. I yelled for him one more time before I turned tail and ran down the stairs, figuring he wasn't home. I then went into mama survival mode. Before I was even back in my apartment, I was on the phone with 911. A quick note, I was home alone with all 3 kids who are under 3. I grabbed my kids and got back just as the fire department shows up. They go in and come out a few minutes later, and who comes out with them? You guessed it was my neighbor with his 2-year-old kid. They were in there the whole time. He was so strung out that whatever he was doing, he didn't hear the fire alarms or me screaming at him that the place was on fire. He was woken up by the fire. I went off when I saw him. Up until now, my husband has dealt with him because I am not a confrontational person. But not only did he put my children and me in danger, he almost got his own son killed over a habit, and the mama bear and me just snapped. I screamed, I yelled, I probably would have hit him, but I ended up being led away by a firefighter. I told all this to the fire chief and police. The neighbor and his son were taken to hospital for smoke exposure. The police are getting CAS involved because of the obvious child endangerment. Luckily, the fire was out quickly, and we were given the all-clear to go back into our apartment. Now I'm writing this just trying to calm down and hope this incident speeds up the jerk's eviction. 2. This wasn't a story that happened to me, but I was there to witness it happening. So I worked in a boutique shop for almost 4 years before I finally quit in September 2022. And they sold basically everything. Holiday stuff, home fashion furniture, food, pet stuff, kitchen, bathroom, candles, toiletries, you name it. This story happened in 2019, though some dialogue may not be completely accurate. I was working register that day, and this woman comes up to me with her receipt, saying that something come up wrong, and was kinda rude about it, saying she came in the other day and it was supposed to come up at a different price. At the time, registers couldn't do refunds, only customer service did. So I called up someone and they told me they had to do customer service, but they'll see what they can do. As we were waiting, my walkie went off and I hear my coworker's voice come out from the other end. She said a line that makes you beyond curious upon hearing it. Can I have a manager at Register 8? Note I was on Register 2, which is closest to the door. As I hear that, a customer walks past my register towards the door and looks at me and my customer, and he responds with, "Someone call the police! We have an asshole over here!" And he continued to walk out the door. As soon as that customer said that, all our attention went towards my coworker. There was an older man beginning to scream at her, and from where I was at, it was a bit hard to hear because of his screaming. But I did hear something like, "You stole my money, you're robbing me, and I'm going to call the cops." The guy was screaming so loud that everyone who was either within checkout or front of the store radius was paying attention to what was happening with this guy and my coworker. There were several people telling him that he needed to calm down, but he always responded back with, "Mind your own fucking business." People around my register were starting to say how we needed to call for security or the police. Even the woman who complained about her receipt was saying how this guy was out of control. I honestly agreed with them, but the problem was we didn't have any security, and we couldn't exactly call the police either. Eventually, two of my managers came up, both women, one dealing with my customer and the other dealing with this customer. At this point, I started taking my next customer, apologizing to her for the wait, and continued on with my business. The guy did walk past my register to get to customer service, but I avoided eye contact. A little later, when we didn't have any customers, I proceeded to ask my coworker if she was okay, and she said she was. She didn't even look fazed by what happened. I asked her what even happened since I missed the beginning of this. She told me that this customer was buying stuff and included roasting sticks that were $1 at a time. This is a rough translation of the incident. "Okay, sir, here's your change," and she proceeds to hand him a little over $2 in change.
"I'm not touching that, you overcharged me."
He proceeds to show her his receipt to show she actually charged him for 2 roasting sticks. "Oh, I did. I'm sorry, sir, that was my mistake. Mistakes happen."
"Well, I don't make mistakes."
"Okay, sir, well, you can go to customer service and get your money back."
"No, I want my $10 back now."
"Sorry, sir, I can't do that." She proceeds to close the register drawer with the change still in hand. And that's when all hell broke loose for this guy, but the thing is, this crazy guy didn't even spend $10, according to my coworker. He was just really upset over getting overcharged $1. There were no cops involved, just a crazy dude freaking out over $2, who also got the $2 back. I do have to say that my coworker was a freaking legend because of how well she handled this situation. My guess is that she's older and has dealt with customers like this before. I overheard her say she was glad it happened to her instead of one of the younger employees. I would probably have cried if this was me, since I'm terrible with confrontations, and people yelling and screaming at me. My manager did later on say that she came out from the back of the store and heard the screaming, so that should give you an insight of how loud this guy was yelling. I'm glad to be finally free of that place. It became a toxic work environment, but that itself is a multitude of stories of how much shit I had to deal with. However, after working there for nearly 4 years, that had to be the craziest rude customer I've ever witnessed. 3. This happened years ago, and I've been reading a lot of entitled people posts lately, so it made me think of this. My husband and I got married 14 years ago, and as a wedding gift, we received 12 full china sets, including sterling silver flatware. We live in a small house and only have 2 children, so 12 sets is way too many for us to store. The sets were never used and still in the box, so we decided to sell 4 of them. I posted them on a local Facebook sellers group, each item separately, meaning I was selling the flatware separately from the china plates and from the crystal goblets and wine glasses. I posted photos of the flatware with details of the brand, model number, and showed how they were new in the box. I also posted a link to where they were purchased from with the original cost. I posted these for sale about 6 months after our wedding, so they were still brand new and not outdated at all. Each flatware set, salad fork, entree fork, knife, soup spoon, regular spoon, and dessert fork, was purchased for $75 a piece plus tax, because they were sterling silver. Even though they were still in the box, I knew I couldn't sell them for $75, so I asked for $60 per set. Granted, this was a great deal considering they were being sold in the store for $75, so if the buyer wanted them, they would be getting a deal. I didn't realize how many people would respond. I started getting comments under my post immediately, like literally 150 comments or so, asking to purchase. In the post I said, first come, first serve. I started with the first person, and when they tried to haggle or couldn't meet for several days, a week, I moved on to the next commenter. I explained that I needed these gone in the next 72 hours if possible, and with so many people interested, I didn't think this would be an issue at all. I started getting private messages on my social media regarding the flatware, because potential buyers were arguing in the comments about wanting to purchase my items, which I was shocked about because they were literally forks, spoons, and knives. But I was thrilled because I needed to get rid of them, and I would be making some money that my husband and I could really use at the time. One of the messages I received was from a 50-plus-year-old woman, Karen, who messaged me saying, Are the flatware sets still available? I told her yes, I'm working down the list on who commented first, and then second, so on and so forth. Apparently, this particular group had a very strict set of rules about selling items that I wasn't aware of since I'd never sold anything on there. Karen told me that if I sold the flatware to her, she wouldn't report me to the admins for violating the rules and avoid a ban from the page. By now, I was kind of annoyed but wanted to be done with the whole thing because the comments were starting to get nasty anyway, and I wanted them gone. I told Karen if she met up with me at a mutually agreed upon location today after work, I would sell the flatware to her. She agreed, and we went back and forth a few more times to discuss logistics. Then she sent me this message. By the way, I plan to pay you $8 per set. I'll take all 4. I actually laughed out loud at this, and I told her that the price was a firm $60 per set, and that there were countless other potential buyers willing to pay that price. In fact, part of the reason the comments were getting so nasty, and why the rules were violated, was because the commenters started offering me more than the OG asking price if I agreed to sell it to them and not go down the list according to the first come, first serve. Karen again started threatening me and telling me that she was good friends with the admin, and what I was allowing to occur under my post violated the rules and could result in a permanent ban from the group. She doubled down and even asked if I throw in one of my China sets as a measure of good faith and as an apology for causing so much chaos in the group. I had had enough at this point, and told her that the only way I would consider selling her my flatware now, after threats, was if she paid $65 per set. I upped the price, and if she met me today with cash in hand. Karen got so angry that I could almost see smoke coming out of her words she was typing to me in the DM. She said she'd see me next Tuesday and called me a bitch. And I was a horrible person. She started guilt-tripping me that she needed this flatware because it was on back order. I later found out this is true, which may have been why there was such a frenzy for mine, and that I had to sell them to her at her price because I was a rule breaker. Little did she know I couldn't care less about being a member of this Facebook group. I never bought anything from there and only posted these specific items this one time for sale. These groups are a dime a dozen, so if I was banned, I would still sleep like a baby every night and not give it a second thought. I told Karen that I was done DMing with her and that we weren't going to come to an agreement, obviously, and I wished her luck on finding the flatware she needed elsewhere. She started tagging all of the admins from the group under my post and telling them that the group's rules were being violated. I started getting DMs from the main admin about the flatware pot, asking what was going on. I explained the situation with Karen and shared all the screenshots. I told the admin that if she had to ban me, that was fine. I would delete my post and sell it via DMs or in another group. Admin was super nice and told me that I wouldn't be banned, and she apologized for how Karen treated me. She advised that I go back to trying to sell at the original asking price and in order of who commented first. Long story short, I ended up selling all 4 flatware sets for $60 apiece to a very sweet lady that same day. Karen still commented nasty things on the post for days after the post was marked as sold, and the admin ended up getting Karen banned from the group. 4. This is my story of meeting and working with one of the most entitled assholes I've ever known. It's long, with lots of backstory and incidents, and an ending over a year in the making. I'll try to summarize first with the basics. I've been with my company for over 10 years, and was hired as the department head for analytics and reporting. Not exactly relevant, but I had more than enough skills, experience, and multiple skill sets required for this position. I was a jack of all trades with hardware, software, and troubleshooting experience. Not to mention a background in management, so I was left in charge of 2 awesome and hard-working employees whom I'm still in contact with. Sadly, my company fell on hard times after about 5 years. We had a management regime change. Management decided to outsource our IT department, later realized how much of a fuck-up that was and hired most back. During this time, most of my employees were let go, and I was merged with the accounting department for budget reasons. Accounting had no idea what I did, and I was left under the guise of poor middle management and leadership. Nobody knew what I did, or how I did it, so I was mostly left to my own devices. Because of the loss of my 2 employees, my ticketing queue quickly rose to unmanageable levels within a few months. Projects that used to take 2 or 3 weeks were taking 2 to 3 months plus, because I had to tackle the work of 3 people myself. The heads of all departments demanded that I get some additional help, but the budget wouldn't allow it. I kept asking, begging for more help other than worthless temps who couldn't assist in an environment entirely skill-based. After 2 years, my requests for a full-time employee were being heard. Hooray! Right? A month or so later, the newest accounting middle manager to get assigned to me knocked on my door. She let me know to set aside some time next week to meet the new Director of Business Intelligence. WTF. Director. Business Intelligence. Turns out they had hired not my new employee, but my co-partner, who would share the duties of analytics and reporting. Hired as in they did it already and without my insight or approval. I was assured by HR when I came to complain that the new hire was to equally share in my burden of responsibilities. At the same time all of this was happening, I was no longer head of analytics and reporting, which is an entirely different story altogether, and will be told at a later time. The newly hired qualified individual was supposed to work alongside me instead of under me or over me, an equal partner to take over an equal share of the job duties, so these projects can be addressed. If you couldn't already guess, that is not at all who they hired. Enter Buck, as in pass the buck. A guy whose first words to me upon introduction was, and I quote, "So you're the old guy who can't handle it on his own." First off, not that old. Not even by Reddit standards. Secondly, I figured his comment was intended to be a joke, but it was hard not to take it any other way but condescending. The air of superiority radiated in those first few weeks was exhausting. Constantly going on and on about how he was the best, he has never found a shortage of work because he's so highly sought after, blah blah blah. To give him some credit, his skills in Power BI were decent. I'd even go so far as to say acceptable, and possibly better than mine since it was literally the area he was hired to do. That being said, his skill set in everything else required for the job, Director of Business Intelligence, was severely lacking. Excel training. Nah, never needed it. SQL skills. I dabbled. Database navigation. Yeah, got nothing, man. VL lookup, match index. Huh? What's VL lookup? Pivot tables? No clue what that is, dog. Cross-server reporting experience. Is that where you combine servers? I'm no developer, man. Buck was hired, and he quoted, "To do visual presentations for accounting. This is the direction your company is headed, and I'm the guy to bring us there." My exact words were, no, that is not where our company is headed, and we will be working on Power BI together. He smugly replied, "You don't know more than me about BI. Bet you a hundo on that, dog." Important to note that he slapped my hand in a fair bet exchange in that interaction. The next few weeks I found out and confirmed the following. He was not hired by the newly hired IT executive and manager in the newly restructured IT department. Buck clearly didn't know anything about analytics nor reporting. His specialty was Power BI presentations and simple client dashboards. He was told he was going to oversee any and all presentations and dashboards, duties assigned to the analyst and reporting department head, now former head, again a story for another time. He took that to mean he was head of the analyst and reporting department, aka he thought he was in charge of me. Mind you, all presentations and BI dashboards are maybe 5 to 10% of the department's job duties and project allocations over the course of a year. Buck took charge in assigning himself 2 of the 23 backlogged projects in the queue that first 6 months. Yes, 2 projects for 6 months of work, when each project was allocated 2 or 3 weeks worth of work. left the rest of the urgent daily stuff long-term projects to me.
That's not part of my job description. I wasn't hired to do that.
Spoiler, his job duties and description was literally a carbon copy of my job duties and description. The ticketing crew metrics were showing I was doing 82% of the tickets at or under the allotted time allowed, while Buck was doing 18% with the majority of them late or OOC, out of compliance. He was constantly making excuses for not updating tickets, taking 4 or 6 times longer than normal, and sucking up to the accounting middle management by giving them free tickets to basketball and baseball games. Game tickets which he got free from doing his second job, he freelanced for well on our company's time. Accounting turned a blind eye because work was being done, and for them, while I refused to play favorites and bump their tickets in the role they were received, working under the umbrella of accounting was the worst period of my life working for my company. All the while, Buck was doing his bare minimum, working his other job remotely while on the clock for our company, and taking 1 or 2 hour lunches even though he arrived earlier than I did and left before me. More management regime changes, and finally we got a competent IT director, whose first duty was to bring analytics and reporting back into IT. The days of Buck slacking off doing the bare minimum and double-dipping 2 jobs at the same time were apparently at a close. Another spoiler, not really. From the moment he had to attend daily Scrum meetings, he bitched, moaned, and complained that the switch from accounting was a bad idea. Not once, but every friggin' day. The IT director had to interrupt one of his rants one day with, "Okay, we heard you. We aren't your old company, you're in the IT department now." Not only were the daily gripes of not being back in accounting, but he complained non-stop about how we weren't doing things like how they did it at his last company.
Where's the data map? How are we expected to do our jobs without a map?
There was one just set up differently than he was used to.
Oh, you're only supposed to use view tables for reports, to SQL code should be aligned always. Every line needs to be flush, no indents.
To which I finally responded with, "You're welcome to relight all 470 stored procedures, 190 plus view tables, and 60 plus functions to be left aligned." The fool attempted to do it once. Our IT's quality control analyst rejected his updated left-aligned code to be approved in the upcoming iteration until it was adjusted back to company and industry standards. When COVID-19 forced us to work from home, Buck was elated and started packing a week early to leave for what he bragged would be a never-ending vacation. Turns out he ended up being the last essential IT employee in the office. He was refused authorization to work from home because he had labeled his position as an essential employee to the director of IT. Yep. The fool had bragged countless times in our Scrums meetings that his work was essential to accounting daily operations. His reasoning for taking 5 times longer to do any project than normal. Well, he got his wish, and the director lent Buck back to accounting exclusively during COVID's 2020 and early 2021. Accounting management was thrilled with this arrangement, much to Buck's grumbling and complaining in private Teams meetings between him and myself. In reality, we all knew this was to keep an eye on him, so he couldn't slack off or go back to double-dipping while on our company's time. That didn't stop him from trying every scheme imaginable to try and skirt his duties. Our help desk was then authorized to search his computer, and they found countless VPNs he used to view restricted websites and his other job, mouse mover software, and paid templates he downloaded at his expense to do the work he was supposed to do on his own. My director of IT was at a loss on how to get rid of him because all the managers in accounting, including the VP himself, loved his brown-nosing antics and the work he performed for them. They literally had proof he was double-dipping, using VPNs to counter the browser and website tracking, time card logs of him taking 1 or 2 hour-long lunches, and still couldn't fire the guy. I later found out he used the persons of minority card many times to HR and management when accusations were brought up. This entitled prick would fight, argue, complain to our boss that he shouldn't have to do SQL scripts, coding, and reporting requests that involved Excel. Literally said it was beneath him while in Scrum's meeting. To which our boss replied calmly, "Well, I use Excel and learn new formulas every day to perform my job duties. I suggest you learn." Buck replied snarkily,
It's not part of my job duties.
to which our boss quite calmly replied, "Oh, it quite literally is. I have your contract right here." To which he proceeds to list all of the duties I do on a daily and weekly basis that he previously refused to do. Buck grumbled something about that was bullshit, and put his mic on mute, something he never ever did, later telling me in our team's meetings that he felt he was being singled out because of his race. I just shook my head, kept my head down, and left it up to upper management to handle this asshole. I say that mostly because I tolerated Buck. His entitled attitude was come and go, as it were. I refused to be a rat to go upper management over the shit he pulled. His actions regarding the double-dipping, lazy, poor work ethic, and taking the long work lunches were already known to most. It had been over a year and some change since Buck was hired, and disaster hit in my personal life. I was forced to take an extended leave of absence, and I requested for at least a month, possibly more. I take my leave and handle things with my family, not giving work a second thought. Buck, on the other hand, was feeling the full wrath of the ticketing queue. My job duties he refused to learn, dozens of demanding clients and needy managers all demanding his attention. As Buck refused on record to learn or perform my job duties, so the executives were forced to take a long, hard look at accounting's golden boy. Words like incompetent, lack of training, no knowledge or understanding of how our company works, lack of skill, and poor work ethic. Around the third week of my leave of absence, I got a phone call asking to come back early. I politely refused as my family was more important than a job. Around 2 or 3 days later, I got another ring from the owner and the CEO himself, both pleading with me to come back. I refused at first, but they encountered with a substantial pay increase. I countered with that increase and a title change. They eventually agreed, and I told them I would be back the following Monday, as I was still dealing with my family issues. Come that following Monday, I went back to being head of the analytic and reporting department, which meant I was in charge of Buck. Buck didn't like this arrangement. Buck wanted to continue to believe he was in charge of me. His ego refused to acknowledge that I was in any position to be an authority figure over him. The ticketing queue was now more appropriately balanced, 55% for me, 45% for Buck. He was graded on timely completion and compliance times, graded on his communications with the stakeholders, and forced to explain his 1 or 2 hour lunches while maintaining an 8 to 4 punch-in-and-out schedule. His first performance review was tanked into oblivion. Poor performance and needs improvement were plastered on every section. This went on for 3 more months, before the final straw broke Buckback Mountain. Remember that $100 bet that he was a better Power BI designer than I was? Well, a new ticket came in, and it was allotted a 3-week project time frame for its complexity. I assigned it to myself, not having any working experience with PBI in over 2 years. I got my license renewed, opened a new project, and worked furiously for a solid week on it. I finished it in exactly 7 days and 4 hours, and I uploaded it to the cloud for management testing. Our intranet forums were blowing up with positive feedback. I know, right? Actual feedback. UIT peeps that are itching to call bullshit, believe me, I know. And it was quickly approved in QA and went into production. At the quarterly company meeting, I was given an award and a cash bonus for being an exemplary employee for coming back to work early from my LOA. My work the past few months, and I was singled out on that Power BI report as an example of my excellent work. At the start of the next day's team meeting, Buck said nothing but, "Good job," in quiet tones as the meeting started. He started acting particularly smug as he somehow forgot to mention his second job had paid him a bonus. I knew he was bullshitting, but I honestly didn't care if he did get it or not. So long as he didn't do that second job while working at this one. He wouldn't shut up about it, so I decided to change directions. I brought up the fact that he bet me early in his hiring that he was a better Power BI developer than me. He refused to remember saying anything of the like. I was honestly just trying to get him to stop bragging about his fictitious bonus, plus He was quick to dish it out all the time, so I was returning the favor. He blew up at me over the Teams meeting, a meeting he knew was being recorded to our SharePoint cloud because the icon on the screen had the record button on. I wasn't necessarily shocked at his instant show of anger, but I misunderstood the source of his ire. I thought he was pissed about me snubbing his bonus recognition, not the $100 bet. So we went back and forth for a bit, each of us rehashing old arguments, before I got the crux of his ire. Buck refused to back down that he ever made a bet. I called him out on it, and refused to back down that he did indeed say it. I didn't care about the $100, it was a principle of it. That don't lie to me about what we both said to each other. It's important to note that Buck felt our team's meeting were in an open mic to discuss whatever he wanted, free from consequence or actions. During this meeting, he felt his rights as an employee were violated. Mainly he didn't want to pay a $100 bet he made and was determined to welch on. Not that I was better at his precious PBI than he was. I got a call from HR to come into the office, which I figured early on what it was about. I explained my side of the story, and that I was told by HR an entirely different set of allegations. That I threatened Buck, used derogatory, demeaning words against his race, called him a liar, and used actions unbecoming a head of department. I vehemently denied it to the point that I was laughing at the audacity. I told the head of HR to review the recordings if she wished. She perked up at this point, and got the director of IT involved. They sure enough found the meeting's recording, and I didn't hear anything of it for a week or so. Buck and I were on minimal conversation mode, at best, and our meetings were 2 or 3 minutes to go over the ticketing queue, and that was it. Turns out the following Monday, Buck was terminated before he got to his desk, and escorted off of the premises with his box of personal stuff from his desk. As his manager, I was expected to be debriefed, but I was given strict details as to not discuss the matter at any time or with anyone. Nearly 10 months ago, when the director of IT and I are having drinks during a department morale get-together, and he finally spills the beans on what happened. Turns out they reviewed over 1.5 years' worth of recorded team meetings, and found out Buck admitted to double-dipping on company time, taking 2 or 3 hour extended lunches, using VPNs, and gave out company secrets to his second job, Code. Here is where it got interesting. Buck hired an employment attorney, and a formal letter was sent to HR within a few weeks. In it, Buck was claiming his rights were violated because of his race, asked to do job duties not to his contract, that his manager, I was not specifically named, but clear the letter was referring to me, would demean, belittle, and degrade him. Our company legal team assembled all the paperwork, over 50 audio recordings from our meetings, and the judge shut the case down within days. I asked the director why it took so long to get his ass fired. He replied that they needed him to admit to doing these things, else it could be chalked up to breaches in security or poor management of an employee, or him pulling the race card every chance he got. It's been over 1 year, and Buck is still not employed according to his LinkedIn profile. Aw, too bad. 5. This incident wasn't necessary in my opinion, cause I wasn't at fault and they refused to get the mistake fixed themselves. Cause I couldn't change it even if I wanted to, since I'm not a manager and I'm not supposed to leave my ticket podium. I don't remember what the other movies were playing besides the movie ticket that was accidentally printed out for them, which is Transformers: The Last Night. It was evening rush hour at the moment, and there were lots of people coming in to watch a movie, as well as teenagers trying to sneak in to watch a free movie. I'm working quick as I can, directing them to their movies, when a group of maybe mid-20-year-olds come in. They get their tickets and come to me. They basically shove their tickets rudely into my face to the point where I had to take a step back to not get poked in the eye. They were barely paying attention and too busy chatting with one another and didn't listen to me.
What are you talking about? We're all watching the same movie.
I point to the ticket. Sorry, but only 4 tickets go to the right, and these 2 are for Transformers.
We didn't pay for Transformers.
I'm sorry, but you'll have to go to the box office and have them change the tickets for you. Can't you just change the ticket yourself? I clearly don't have a monitor and only an online ticket scanner, which can't do refunds or swap tickets. I also can't call a manager to refund them because Sky was already helping out in the box office. Hence why I told them to return to the box office to get their tickets changed, while Chan, Steve, Mandy and River were helping out at the concession stand. But the Chads and Karens refused to go back to the box office. Instead continued to demand I change their tickets myself. I'm really sorry that you got the wrong ticket, but I can't let you in until you get your tickets changed. You're more than welcome to go back to the box office to...
No, you need to do your job and get my tickets right now.
I'm now getting very annoyed and probably shouldn't have done this, but I returned his attitude by saying to him, I've already told you that I'm not allowed to move from my podium. You can go to the front and change the tickets yourself, because it's not my responsibility to change your tickets for you. Chad was clearly upset and says to me,
I should slap you across the face for giving me attitude. I am the customer and I am always...
Everyone else that was forced to wait behind them is getting mad and tells them to leave me alone and just go change their tickets or leave. And I'm not supposed to leave my ticket podium.
Hey, leave her alone. She's doing her job. She's already told you that you can't change your tickets from here. Just go back to the front and tell them they made a mistake with your tickets.
Chad looked like he wanted to fight them, but I guess his friends didn't want that and just talked him into going back to the front instead, so I can continue to move the line along. The customers who backed me up told me I did good for standing my ground before heading off to their movies. I actually felt pretty tired because I don't like starting conflicts and it easily drained me. I started hearing some yelling from the front, followed by Dean running out of the box office, literally leaving the building looking for Chads and Karens who had stormed off, only for him to return a few minutes later, still looking around, agitated about something. After the rush hour finally passed, we all got together at the center of the concession stand to breathe, while talking about how stressful that last hour was, which is when Sky, clearly confused about something, walks towards us saying something along the lines of, "What were they so mad about?" Are you talking about that group of adults? Yeah, it was so weird. The guy was saying he wanted to bitch slap that bitch for giving him an attitude. Is that why Dean ran out of the box office? Yeah, you know why he was so mad? I told him that he couldn't go right in because not all of them had the right tickets. Then when he kept telling me to change it for them, I firmly told them that I'm not letting them go until they got their tickets swapped, and told me he wanted to bitch slap me. Sky was clearly shocked because her response was, "That was you he wanted to slap?" Dang, I'm very surprised she stood up to him. I thought he meant a different woman. I'm assuming Sky thought he was talking to maybe River or Mandy, not me. But I told her I've dealt with bullies throughout preliminary school, and I've learned to stand up for myself. Everyone was shocked, but glad to have me checking tickets that night. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Idiots in the Wild, episode 85. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before I go on, if you could please boop the like button and share the video around with friends and family. I greatly appreciate it. Also, big thanks to everybody who left comments on Monday's big old paranormal video. It's a couple of days ago now, but if you haven't seen it, please do hop along and give it a look. It's a massive amount of work, but I think it came out quite well in the end. So thank you very much for your kindness. Alright, let's see. I don't think we have any... No, we don't have any special shout-outs today. I think there's one next week. So let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is... For those of you who don't go to the cinema anymore, what was the last film you saw? And is there any film franchise that would actually get you to go again? Personally speaking, I just enjoy watching movies at home. You've heard me talk about that before. But I think the only thing that would actually get me to go and watch a film again would be a Star Trek film. And while I do personally enjoy the Kelvin Timeline films, it wouldn't be one of those. It would have to be like a TNG, Deep Space Nine, even Voyager, just that whole era. That would be enough to actually get me to go into a cinema, in theory. I probably still wouldn't do it, though. I'd wait for it to come out so I could watch it at home. But I would be interested. And I think the last thing I did watch was, in fact, a Star Trek film, but it was many, many years ago. But let me know what your answers are. Please do leave them in a comment below. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.